Hi, my name is Sonia Chung, and welcome to Film Lovers, where I talk to people in the film industry or who are avid film fans. I'll be asking them questions about what's influenced them, etc. Today, I'll be talking to screenwriter and film critic, who also happens to be my friend, Tom Jolliffe. Hi, Tom. How are you?
Hi Sonia, I'm very good. How are you?
Oh, okay. We had a bit of a hard time connecting and sorting everything out, didn't we? But we got there in the end.
Yeah, we're both really great with technical things, I think.
It happens. How have you been? What have you been up to?
Yeah, I've been good. So I've been, working quite a lot at the moment. So I'll just mention that I'm a screenwriter.
Yeah, tell
So
us
I've
a
been
bit
writing.
about how you got into that and being a film critic and what made you decide to do that, what interested you, etc.
Yeah, so I've just been interested in film since I was younger, and initially I was a bit more interested in film criticism.
Mm.
So that just started on IMDb, writing reviews on there.
Oh
And
wow.
And then from there, I kind of took it and I applied at a few different websites.
Sure.
Um, yeah, so then about 11 years ago, I started writing for a website called Flickering Myth.
Okay.
So, yeah, they're quite sort of well known. Initially, they were well known just in the UK, but they've kind of spread. And then they've got quite a big readership in America now as well.
Did they contact you or did you contact them? Is that how you started?
Yeah, I contacted them initially. So I just said, I've got like an example piece that I can send you. And then from then on, I've just been writing steadily for them for 11 years now.
And
And I
how?
get,
Oh, sorry.
and that's okay. Yeah, I just get to write, whatever I like. So there's a kind of freedom there. I can talk about any kind of film that I want. So I really enjoy that.
Oh, that's really. So you do all genres.
Yeah, pretty much all genres and all types. And yeah, it was just from there my passion for film. I've always been passionate about writing as well, so that kind of led into screenwriting.
Yeah. Well, that's a very good way to get into it, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose a few other people have done that as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just sort of started doing a bit of screenwriting as a hobby, and then it kind of snowballed eventually into doing short films. And then from doing short films, I ended up doing feature films.
Yeah. So it's all networking.
Yeah, but yeah, basically it's just keep networking, building up contacts, and it was quiet for the first few years when I was trying out,
Sure.
uh, and inevitably I had to sort of produce my first couple of films myself just to get them done.
Yeah.
And as you know, because you've made some films yourself as well.
Mm-hmm. Um, how has the pandemic been treating you? I mean, what was last year like during the first lockdown, etc., and then the progress between then and now? Has it been hard on your work? Because I mean, I know the film industry has taken a huge big cut from the pandemic, and projects
Yeah,
have had
it
to be put on
has.
hold, etc.
Yeah, it's been good in terms of having time to write and develop things. And I've sort of picked up a few more contacts during the time
Sure.
because I'd been just before the pandemic for sort of about 18 months before. Uh, that's when I kind of got my launch into feature films, and it was predominantly kind of low budget horror
And
because they're
that's
quite
right.
marketable.
Yeah, I can
And
imagine they would be.
yeah, and they're cheap to produce as well. So I made a few contacts sort of during the pandemic because everyone's at home and they've got nothing to do. So you start firing out emails and things like that. So that led me to doing kind of action films as well,
Yeah.
which are a little bit kind of bigger budget. So the
And I
most recent
imagine,
one,
sorry,
the
I
most recent one I did had Danny Trejo in,
yeah, I love
and
him.
yeah, I love Danny as well. So it kind of it was a good opportunity that came around. I mean, that film itself was delayed. The actual production itself was delayed it was supposed to film at the end of last year, but it's only filmed May this year, so it got delayed, sort of the shoots itself. But no, it was good. So a part of the delay also meant that we could actually get in Danny Trejo and a few other sort of American actors.
Yeah.
Because initially it was there weren't going to be quite as many in the cast, but because of delays and things, sort of things opened up for people, and there was chances that came in, and an opportunity to get people like Danny Trejo in and Lee Majors as well.
But that must have been really hard and frustrating for you that you had to be putting those projects on hold until everything was okay to go ahead. Because I know a lot of films had to be they started, and then as soon as the first lockdown came into place, they had to stop. And they started up again probably during the summer or whatever. But then also you got people who are having to, the crew and the cast who also have to do the tests every day before they go in. Did you have to do that as well?
No, I've been quite fortunate because as a screenwriter, one of the benefits is that I don't necessarily have to be on set.
Okay, that's really good.
At this budget level, I mean, in sort of Hollywood, it would be a bit different.
Sure.
I'd probably have to be on set every day. But no, a lot of the productions have streamlined everything as well. So during the height of the pandemic, when people were actually able to film, they had to sort of streamline, the cast and everything, and extras and people on set down to a minimum.
Because I heard, I heard that because everyone was trying to race to get all their work out into the cinemas, all this stuff got put on Netflix and other streaming sites. Is that right? I guess because they needed, I don't know, the publicity, etc.
I think there's been a little bit of that. While the cinemas were closed, some films ended up just going to streaming. But then you've had things like James Bond and a few other things that got pushed back because just for the money that they spend on some of the really big films, they really need to be out at the cinemas.
And I remember reading about Robert Pattinson when they had to stop filming Batman because there were members of the crew who were getting it, and then they stopped it, and then once everyone was okay, they went back, and then he got it. So he's obviously the main star of the film, so they can't do anything without him, really. So I mean that must cost a lot of money as well, I'd imagine, for the production side of it, to be having to put things on hold.
I think so. Yeah, every delay is costly, but I mean these kind of films, they can kind of afford it, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, because I mean, the Mission Impossible film, the latest one, had a few problems as well. So,
there was that
Tom Cruise,
famous rant he did, wasn't there, at one of the cast, one of the crew members. But actually, I mean, I personally think that he was taking responsibility for the production because he's also one of the producers, isn't it? So in a way, he made sense what he was talking about that it's everyone else's livelihoods and they can't afford to mess around. And he had, obviously the execs, etc., above him and the studio is putting pressure on him to get this film released in the cinema, etc. So it must have been a lot, especially for a big budget film, to try and get people back in a cinema again.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think at the moment things are still kind of recovering, and I think the problem is people have got very used to watching things at home now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone kind of has like a big TV now. It's getting easier to get a big sound system and.
But don't you think it's so sad? Because it used to be at a point like when we were growing up that going to the cinema was like a big event. Do you know what I mean? We're like, what should we do today, like with your friends, if you had a day or a weekend off and you're like, we'll meet up, let's go to the cinema and watch so-and-so. And now nobody really does that because I guess it's too expensive. And also, like you said, everything gets released also onto those streaming sites really fast. Whereas before, it used to take, I mean, in the 80s especially, there used to be films in the cinemas for months before they got released.
It's a little bit, it's difficult because I guess the industry is trying to find ways to keep making money.
Sure.
But, so that's why you've had some that have had like simultaneous releases with cinema and on streaming as well.
Yeah.
Because I think there's some films that are trying to kind of cut their losses a bit, because I think there's no getting around with, you know, if you've spent $250 million on a film that you're probably going to lose money.
Yeah, well, you need to make the money back somehow, don't you? So
yeah.
But I remember my mum and her partner saying that they saw a film on Netflix and the sound was so bad, and apparently there were quite a few of them. Which kind of makes you think that they must have been really rushing to get this stuff out onto Netflix. You know what I mean?
There has been a really big push for content. I know that. So
yeah.
That kind of leads into my kind of, because I'm doing kind of lowish budget films anyway. So
sure.
They're all kind of straight to DVD and Blu-ray and stuff like that. So it's kind of my market.
Yeah. Did you
Hopefully with better sound though.
Yeah. Did you get to watch any films or catch up on any films during the lockdowns in general? Or I guess you had your family to to keep busy, and your daughter as well, homework.
Yeah, I mean during lockdown, because initially I was supposed to be going out to China.
Oh yeah, of course you were. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, so sort of end of January time, I was meant to be going out to China. My family had gone there a couple of weeks earlier.
Yeah, I remember this.
And they went basically 1 week before the pandemic.
Oh, God.
And then I was supposed to meet them out there and start working out in China as a teacher.
Mm.
But then the pandemic hit and that kind of put paid to that. So from the end of January to October, I was basically at home alone.
I remember this, yeah. And they came, I mean, how long was it before your wife and your daughter came back?
So, yeah, from end of January to late October.
Wow. That was a long time, wasn't it?
It was tough. So I was just filling all my time with, because I'd left my previous job. So to begin with, I didn't have any kind of work at the time. So I had to rush into getting some online work, and then eventually I did some temporary work at a supermarket, which ended up becoming permanent.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was just sort of doing that to fill time, as well as writing.
Well, I was going to say that's a good time to, I mean, obviously with all that time on your hands, it's obviously a good time to start writing or thinking of other ideas, etc., because you've got all that time to deal with. But yeah, but let's get on to who were your influences as directors as you were growing up or up to now. Who's been your most influential filmmakers, etc.?
I think the first film which really got me kind of into just, you know, cinema and just loving films, I think for a lot of kids my generation, it was probably Star Wars, but for me, I was a little bit strange, so it was Masters of the Universe.
I remember seeing Star Wars, but I don't remember. Yeah. I mean, I think it was something that we all saw as kids, but then I and this is going to cause some outrage. I don't understand what the big hype is, because I think when you get to a certain age, it varies obviously on the person and their opinion, etc. But now I see clips of it as an adult, and I think this just looks ridiculous. It looks so silly. So
I think it probably does. Yeah, I mean, if it didn't get you as a kid, then you know you'll probably look at it and you'll think, "Oh my god, what is all that about?" Yeah. So I mean, yeah, everyone was sort of watching that. I did love the Star Wars and Indiana Jones and all that, but it was kind of Masters of the Universe that first did it for me.
A boy film.
Yeah, definitely a boy film. Yeah, and also because I was obsessed with cartoons, so when the film came out, that just kicked things off for me.
Did who are your favourite directors at the moment, or who stands out at the most from you at the moment film-wise?
At the moment, yeah.
Do you have any Do you have any favourite filmmakers at the moment that are going around? Or
I like Bong Joon-ho. So he's the guy that did Parasite.
oh my god, you know what? I saw that film after. I mean, I can't remember when it was released. It was a while ago, wasn't it? Was it a year
a couple
ago?
of years ago. Yeah,
and I never watched it.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing all this stuff about it, and being a bit kind of put off because with some foreign films, because you're having to concentrate on obviously the cinematography, the acting, etc., and then the subtitles. Sometimes they talk really fast, and the subtitles are really fast. And if you're dyslexic like me, it becomes even harder. But actually, it was really easy to follow because it's quite slow paced.
And
I
it's
just
not
thought
dialogue heavy, is it?
No, it's really clever. And I was like at the end of it, I was just like basically gobsmacked because I just found it absolutely incredible that it just takes you on this journey through all these emotions, and you know, you never know where you stand with it really either, do you? Because it kind of takes you one place and then all of a sudden it goes another place.
Yeah. I find that there's quite a few Korean films that kind of do that. They balance all these different elements like humour and drama, and then you've got some horror moments in it as well. But it's one of those films where any time I look back on it, I pick up more things as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I
sort of watched I watched Parasite. I'd already seen a couple of his films, and then I went back and looked at a few more after that. So he's done a few more that are really good, like Mother is really good.
Uh-huh.
And then there's a film called Memories of Murder. So if you like films like Zodiac,
sure,
and kind of Seven, it's along those lines. It's a really excellent film.
Yeah. Oh, I loved Seven. I just think that's one of the best David Fincher films ever. But you're a massive fan as well, aren't you?
I am, yeah. So I think
I remember talking
that's
about
probably
this.
my favourite of his, I think.
It's so good. And you know what? I didn't realise. I did some research about it. It was actually a novel before. So, I mean, I know a lot of the films are because they have to buy the rights to make it into a screenplay, etc. But I didn't realise it was actually a novel before. I mean, I know Fight Club was, and there was quite a few of them.
Yeah. So I didn't realise that either. So that's a new one to me.
Oh, did you not know that? Oh, well, there you go. You learn something new every day. Who are you?
Well, that's what we're here for.
Are there any other filmmakers that inspire you, or that have been basically sort of on your mind lately, or you've been kind of binge watching their films lately, apart from?
Yeah. So another kind of recent director is Robert Eggers.
Okay.
So he did. Have you seen The Lighthouse?
No.
Yeah, so he did The Lighthouse and he did a film called The Witch.
Okay.
He's just done 2 films so far, but they're both kind of horror films. And they're both kind of very strange. So they're in the vein of The Shining.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, very atmospheric and very kind of
eerie.
Yeah, so it's more about atmosphere and eeriness over like jump scares and things like that.
What would your say top? I don't know if I should say top 10 or top 5 films be, because I don't know if you have that many. So if you don't have as many as 10, what would your top 5 be? 1 being the highest.
I could probably stretch to a top 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
I find these kind of things really difficult. So
they are really hard.
Yeah. I've kind of got a top 3.
Okay.
Which are pretty much stay consistent.
So what would your number 3 be then, or number 5 if you can think of a 4 and 5? If not, go to.
I'll do the top 3 and I'll mention maybe a few others.
Yeah, and then you can talk a bit about it as well, and like why they sort of stand out in your top 3 the most.
Yeah. Okay. So in at number 3 is With Nell and I.
Yeah, classic.
So, yeah, that one. When I was at film school, so I studied English and film at university.
Yeah.
And With Nell and I is a big student favourite, particularly in the UK. So all these students are sort of saying to you, you've got to watch With Nan and I. So I ignored them completely for like the first few years, and then eventually I thought a few years later, well, maybe I have to get around to watching it, and then it turned up free in one of the newspapers on a Sunday. So I bought that, watched it, and I was like, really? It's all right.
It is really good. But you know what? I didn't watch it because I know it's basically a cult classic for students because of all the references, etc. And it's just so funny. But especially with Richard E. Grant being basically on booze all the time and like demanding to have booze. But I just thought they were all so good. And Uncle Monty was my favourite. Like, he stands out the most to me. He's so eccentric.
Quite a tragic character as well.
He is, actually, isn't he?
Yeah. So the first time I didn't quite get it. And then the second time I was thinking, actually, now I see what they're going on about.
Yeah, and With Now is actually quite tragic as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
Compared to, sorry, I interrupted you there. It's quite hard when you can't see each other and you're recording their voices. It's like basically having a telephone call, which is what we're doing via Zoom, and recording the sound as well. What's your number? So anything you want to say about With Nell and I, like why it stood out, etc.?
I was just saying that, the more I watched it, the more I picked up on it, the more I kind of tuned into the humour and everything about it and all the quirks. Because also, as well as being kind of, having all these classic lines, because I'm actually the member of this there's a Facebook group that is a fan group of the film, basically, and it's people just relentlessly quoting it.
Yeah. Did you see when he did during the lockdown? He was basically reenacting those famous quotes that he did.
Yeah.
Like on the phone, in the phone box, and about the cow. It was just, it's hilarious. You can go on YouTube, they're all there.
Yeah, I love that one. So, yeah, it's basically that almost every line in the film is quotable.
You like the one where they're in the phone box, don't you? You said, we've gone on holiday by mistake. And I'm like, are you the farmer?
Yeah.
But you're right, there's just so many memorable quotes, and I think that's why it kind of stands out as well, because it's just so funny, and also you can tell that it would be kind of a student film. It wouldn't have had as much impact when it just got released, I'd imagine. It would have probably taken a long time to develop a following, like some films are.
I think, it took us sort of at least 10 years.
Oh, really?
Towards the sort of end of the century before, it started picking up legions of fans.
So what's your number 2 film? Oh, sorry. Were you finished? What's number 2 for you?
I'll go to number 2. Taxi Driver.
Oh, that's another good one.
Yeah.
What made you choose Taxi Driver as number 2?
I think, so like when I was younger, sort of up to just before my teens, most of the films I was watching were kind of like Stallone and Schwarzenegger. The first kind of few highbrow films that I was watching, if you can call them highbrow, I guess. So the first more mature films, one of them was Taxi Driver.
Mm-hmm.
So, I got kind of into that quite quickly. Like the first time I watched it, I was quite taken aback by it.
Yeah. I didn't know what to expect really watching. I mean, I knew it's obviously about a taxi driver, but I didn't know. I mean, I heard about it because it's like so famous, and it had that famous quote, are you looking at me? And I remember I was 27 and I was in Shanghai for 4 months studying Mandarin. And because there was no English TV, obviously, so I used to go to this DVD shop, and there were lots of films, obviously. So I used to just binge on all these films that I'd never seen or wanted to, and never got round to. And that was one of them. And I didn't know what to expect, but actually it was like, it's a really interesting film. It's a very good film. It's not, I wouldn't say, is it film noir? I wouldn't say it is, but it's basically in the first person, isn't it? And he's, is he a sociopath or a psychopath? He's a sociopath, I think, isn't he? Because he's just come back from the Vietnam War, and he's, an
He probably
ex-veterinarian.
has a slight tendency to both, maybe sort of
Yeah.
between. But yeah, it's just like a really interesting performance because De Niro's always known for being quite intense.
A method.
But yeah, he's always usually plays characters that say a lot. They're quite aggressive and they talk a lot, like when he was in Raging Bull and Goodfellas.
Raging Bull's very good.
Yeah, really good film. So yeah, but Travis Bickle was very kind of introverted.
He's really interesting as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of funny the journey he takes because he starts off being, I mean, you don't know what he's like really. You just know, okay, so it's this guy who's gone into a taxi place to look for a job because he can't sleep as an insomniac. So, you know, he'd rather spend time driving around getting paid for it than not being able to sleep because he can't. And then as the film goes on, there's a lot of talk about how he's fed up with what he sees around the streets. He wishes he could wash it all away, etc., etc. And he becomes quite, I don't know, can I say right-winged? Or do you know what I mean? He's sort of takes it into his own hands. And then by the end of it, he becomes the kind of hero. But then it's kind of left.
Yeah.
It leaves you on the high thinking, oh, he's gone back to driving, so he'll probably get back into that way of thinking. And do you know what I mean? It's quite
possibly, because I mean he doesn't set out to be a hero either, because he tries to kill himself at the end, but he's run out of bullets.
Yeah.
So it's kind of not, it almost happens by accident, that kind of side of it.
Yeah. But you kind of think, is he a good person or a bad guy? Do you know what I mean? Because he's kind of a bad guy. But then when he goes and saves, I can't remember who Jodie Foster's character is. What's her name?
I think Iris,
yeah. When he goes and saves her from the pimp in that very dangerous situation she's in, and there's that massive shootout, you kind of, okay, so this has been his kind of, I don't know what, like his U-turn or his redemption, I guess, in a way. He's come full circle. But then, like I said, the ending, he goes back into driving, and you think, well, what happens now? Which I guess is up to the audience member to think for himself. So it's kind of ambiguous in a way, that ending.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of ambiguity in the film, and I love also the way it looks. It's like this weird kind of looks quite dreamy almost.
Yeah.
New York, the way Scorsese shoots it, because everything looks dirty and grimy, but it almost looks like a fantasy world as well.
Well, it's meant to be, I guess, dirty and grimy, isn't it? Because that's what he starts going on about, that how he wishes he could wash the streets away of these, all these filthy people, etc., and things, but he can't, etc. So it's really clever.
The music in it as well is really, because it shouldn't work, because it's a really kind of odd score.
Yeah.
So it kind of floats between this really kind of light jazzy score, and then every now and again you get these like crescendos of noise just kind of that come into the soundtrack as well.
Yeah.
And turn this kind of like what's quite pleasant music, and then it's suddenly
quite sinister,
becomes quite aggressive.
Yeah. I mean, how old was he? He was 27, I think, when he did that. He was really young.
Yeah, I think De Niro was 25, I think, when he did the film.
Oh, we have to record. Hang on, I'm just going to have to stop because it's saying stop recording. Hang on. All right, sorry about that, Tom. We had a technical thing going on, but we're all sorted now. So, where were we before we left off to go to the toilet and all that stuff?
Just finishing off Taxi Driver.
That's it.
To the number one spot.
Oh, yes, the number one. Yeah. Oh, quick question about Taxi Driver. What did you think about his relationship between him and Sybil Shepherd's character? And then, for instance, when he takes her to the to the adult cinema, and you can see that obviously he has no way of thinking, actually, this is really inappropriate for a first day, for a first date.
Yeah, I mean that just adds to the sort of intrigue of his character, the fact that he's got no kind of concept of how that would be kind of construed as awkward and not acceptable.
Yeah, and also it seems right to him, doesn't it? Because it's something he does all the time. Like when he can't sleep, we'll just go along and watch all these dirty films, etc., and then think it's and then not acceptable, but then think, I can take this girl on a first date to watch a dirty film, and she's obviously sitting there squirming.
Sees the odd couple here and there.
It is really odd. But so what's your sorry?
Yeah, I guess that because he's at night and there's very few things open in New York, so maybe they're the few things that are open. He's kind of got used to going and watching a dirty movie.
That's true. I never thought about it that way. That would make a lot of sense. You're like thinking, why would he do that? Like, why not? Do you know what I mean? But actually, that makes a lot of sense. Because he's basically up all night, isn't it? And there's that shot of him walking out in the early hours of the morning. Looking absolutely exhausted. And and also you're going to think he's sleep deprived, isn't he? So that's going to mess with your mental health and also the way you think. You won't be thinking clearly anyway. So if he's also a sociopath on top of that, then it kind of makes a lot of sense why he does that all of a sudden. So yeah. Is there anything you want to say about it? About Taxi Driver before we go on to number one?
No, that's okay. Let's do number one.
Let's do the drum roll. I can't do the drum roll, but imagine doing the drum roll. Boom, 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 boom. And the number one spot is Blade Runner. Do you know what? I've got to admit, I've never seen Blade Runner.
Oh my word!
But hang on, we'll get back to that later. Tell me why that's your number one favorite film.
Okay, so yeah, like I was just with Taxi Driver before that. When I was growing up, watching kind of quite simple films. I guess I love all the kid films, fantasy films. Blade Runner was one of the first kind of grown-up films that I watched and liked immediately, even when I was a kid. And it's just one of those, just from everything, like visually, the story in it is I've always found interesting.
I mean, it looks visually. I've seen clips of it, and it does look visually amazing because I know it's set in the future. So they obviously, spent a lot of time on the mise en scène, etc., and the costumes, etc. But it's incredible. I mean, when was it? It was made in the 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah, 1982. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's quite famous for having it basically bombed when it came out because it was up against all these kind of blockbusters.
Yeah.
And because it's like a neo-noir as well, so it's an old kind of fashioned noir tale set in the future.
Yeah.
And it was, it's a dark film, and basically they had the theatrical version which had the voiceover, and they tacked on this happy ending. So the film basically bombed. Yeah. At the box office, and then 10 years later they did a director's cut, and that's when it really kind of took on a new life as a cult classic, and then recognised as a masterpiece. Oh, so is that how it came about to being kind of what it is now, and a cult classic? It wasn't just over a period of time where it just developed an audience, or what do you call it? Just basically by ear throughout a long time, if that makes sense. Yeah, it was a director's cut that sort of basically. It was starting to pick up when it came out on VHS, because this was kind of a new thing. So people were so old. They were sort of discovering even the original version was getting a following. Yeah. But then when they showed the director's cut, it just changed the tone of the film, and it kind of felt more consistent. But then because
Sorry.
Yeah, because you didn't have the voiceover. Because it was a really kind of, they didn't want to do the voiceover.
No.
Harrison Ford did it. So he kind of did it really dry and half-assed.
But don't you think that's a credit to... Sorry, I interrupted you. It's hard to tell, isn't it, when we're doing it over just by voice and you can't see each other. So it's kind of like I said, a telephone call. So sorry about that, everyone. What was I going to say? You were just saying... oh, yes, but I was going to say, but don't you think that's a big credit to the editor? Because
yeah, I think
they can make it look so different. And there's been other films like that they've come out, and I remember reading a thing or seeing an interview of Robert Carlyle saying when the first cut of the Full Monty came out, it would have panned and gone completely to pot. But they basically did it all over again in order... I mean, they didn't have to film anything again, but the editor just did it all over again. Because they got a new director, etc. So it does make a huge difference the way a film is edited in its sequence, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, there was quite a famous story about Star Wars that George Lucas had hired this editor who'd been around for like years. He was quite sort of old school editor at the time, so he was doing everything really kind of old fashioned. And then they looked at the cut and it was terrible.
Oh, really?
And it just really badly paced. And because this is kind of a new kind of film, it needed to sort of be edited in a very specific way.
Sure. And also, wasn't it? Was that the reason why it bombed? Then did it come at the same time as the Star Wars films trilogy?
I think. Well, Star Wars kind of launched the blockbuster, so almost everything after that was kind of blockbusters. I think it was E.T. that killed off...
everything.
Yeah, E.T. killed off Blade Runner. I think that's the main one.
Oh, yeah. That must have been out in the cinema for ages. I mean, I don't remember watching that as a kid in the cinema. I saw it like on VHS, I think, much later. But yeah, I can imagine that. I mean, I do remember going. This is makes me feel so old, Tom. I remember going into them. When it's like the 80s or the 90s, used to go into those video rental stores, and on the video box it used to said, "Please rewind afterwards" or whatever. And there was like basically shelves and shelves of videos in each genre, etc., and then what were the latest releases, etc. And I just remember seeing Jaws up all the time, posters of Jaws, and there's obviously lots of other stuff going on around, but there were always posters of Jaws. And that's the only thing I kind of remember. And Blockbusters was when you had to drop back your video into that slot box afterwards.
Yeah.
I kind of miss those days. It was like a big weekend thing. Like, what should we do? Let's go to, the family. And, Sunday was kind of a Blockbuster day. So we used to go out and then go to Blockbusters or Saturday or Sunday, whatever, rent a film and then drop it off the next day.
Yeah, I really missed that as well. That's what I did a lot of that growing up as well in video shops. You used to pick them off the cover as well. This was before. God, now I'm sounding old as well. Or the internet, so you're going by a lot of the time. You're going by just the cover art.
Yeah.
So you're picking up, looking at the cover, and then you're gambling basically. Like everyone knows Star Wars, but there were a few films where I'd pick something up and then you're in the lap of the gods, really, whether it's going to be any good.
Yeah, because I guess really they did they have the trailers on TV then? I can't remember.
Occasionally they did, yeah, or sometimes at the beginning of the tape.
Then I guess it wasn't so much exposure for the non-budget films, so that would make sense. Whereas, like you said, you kind of go and think, maybe I'll try this one, and afterwards you're like, why did I do that? Why did I waste my time watching this? Absolute crap.
I used to love all the sort of cover art on 80s fantasy films.
Oh yeah, they were amazing.
These were always often hand drawn as well, so like the guy who did the posters for Star Wars and Indiana Jones. He used to do all these posters, and a few other guys like him. But they'd make everything look brilliant. So
Yeah.
you pick up this really awesome looking cover that was sort of like a hand drawn cover.
Well, you think about they didn't have all the technology that we had now, did they? I mean, I think all this digital, for photographing, etc., everything became digitalized probably at the beginning of the millennium, didn't it? It sort of took a while to get there. And then it's kind of sad because it used to be a point when, especially in the 80s, because obviously they didn't have CGI, they had to, which I think is more inventive in a way. They were more inventive with the way they used to do their effects, and like I mean, I still kind of gasp at the the creature and the things from it. Well, and that was in the late 70s, wasn't it? So how they came up with all that stuff was all not puppeteer. So it's kind of like animatronics and things like that. It was really clever, and it just like now everything's just too CGI. It just kind of, I think, I don't know what it is.
Anything. Yeah, and they just put too much of it in as well.
Yeah.
Whereas they use it sparingly when you had to sort of like American Werewolf in London.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Or it worked for Jurassic Park. I think Jurassic Park was a film that kicked it all off, wasn't it?
Yeah, for CGI, yeah, but I mean they mixed in animatronics as well.
Yeah.
And again, they didn't use too much of the CG because they thought, well, this is quite new. We better not use too much of it.
Yeah.
We'll use it sparingly. So a lot of the best parts in Jurassic Park are where you can't even see the dinosaurs.
Well, no, the actors are basically they were playing against like basically a tennis ball and things like that. They were getting fed up, weren't they? There's a documentary about it on Netflix about how films were made. Quick question, what did you think about is it the remake or the reboot? I don't know, of the Blade Runner with Harrison Ford and Ryan Gosling. Did you like that? Did you think that was a good reboot? I mean, they would have had so much CGI as well. Which one did you prefer watching visually?
I was surprised because I wasn't expecting to like it. But I mean, the director is another one that I really like at the moment, called Denis Villeneuve.
Mm-hmm.
Villeneuve. I've probably just murdered his name there. Sorry, Denis. But yeah, no, it was really good. It was it fitted into the world well enough, but it also did its own thing.
Yeah.
And, visually it looks amazing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I saw clips of it. I don't know why it's one of those films I never. Sorry, I keep interrupting you, Tom. I feel so bad because we obviously can't see each other, so you can tell me to shut up. But I was going to say, it's just, I don't know what it is. It's one of those films like the original where I've heard about it. And when you hear about a film so much, it kind of puts you off. It's a bit like when a new series comes out on Netflix. Like, I remember when 24 came out the first time round. So that was probably 2001 or something, 2001 or 2002. And I remember thinking, because there was so much hype about the show and it was so new and etc., I was like, I'm not going to watch this. Do you know what I mean? And it took me years to get into it. And then once I remember on a weekend, I had nothing better to do, and I was just being a bum in bed because I was tired. So I thought I'll try and watch something. And I thought, let's give 24 episode 1 season 1 a go. And then I was completely hooked. So then I went for a whole binge for the whole thing. But I think that's why when something gets too much, you kind of think, I don't know. I think that's what it was that put me off Blade Runner. But I will get round to it.
Yeah, but I would say, there's no point watching the second one until you've watched the first.
Okay.
I mean, they do stand alone well, but I would say still watch the first one first.
What's his name? The actor who was in The Hitchhiker. What's his name? He's got a really famous, interesting face, and he's like the villain in The Hitchhiker, but he's got such a menacing face. What was his name? Was it Rude Hullet or something?
Hauer?
Well, yes, he's Danish,
Yeah,
wasn't he?
he
Is he
was
still alive?
Dutch. Yeah, so he's basically, because of that film and The Hitcher as well. He's probably my favourite actor. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
I
yeah,
mean, he just has an amazing face, doesn't he? An amazing presence. Um,
yeah. He's really amazing in the film, and
yeah.
he's always got this really interesting presence. Yeah.
Because isn't
So
he like a cyborg or something, like a robot?
yeah,
Yeah.
so he plays. Yeah, they call them replicants in the film, but yeah,
Okay.
he's like an android.
But
So
is he still alive? He is, I think, isn't he?
no, he died a couple of years ago now,
Oh,
so it was
really?
quite recent. Yeah, very sadly he died.
Yeah. But it's a shame that he didn't do any more in Hollywood, really. I guess he was a lot bigger back home. Because I think he was Danish, wasn't he?
Yeah,
So,
so he was Dutch,
oh,
and
yeah.
yeah, he didn't really do a lot of films back in Holland after he came to Hollywood.
Okay. Oh, he's
So
from Holland, was he?
yeah, from
Okay.
Holland. So
I thought it was from
he's
Denmark for
kind
some
of
reason.
he did a few films and then a few cult films, but if you don't make big box office bucks, then it's difficult to kind of maintain a high level.
And
So he
also, I
ended up doing
guess,
a lot of straight to video things.
well, exactly. Now, also, you got to think he was a working actor, and
Yeah,
he'd done those, big films. And then obviously he needs to keep working, right? But
yeah,
then what are you going to do? So you're going to be typecasted as the bad guy or whatever,
yeah. I
or,
mean,
or
he
like you
did
said,
try and
when the
move
money
away.
stops running out, blockbuster wise. Sorry, Tom. Then
Yeah, so
they're
he
not going to
tried to
hire
sort of
you.
move into becoming more of a hero.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
he was doing a
really?
few films here and there as the good guy, basically, but it didn't really pay off. He
No.
was getting a bit fed up playing the bad guy all the time.
Well, I
So
can imagine,
I
yeah,
think
because
it's like,
he looked the part, which is kind of what
yeah,
Hollywood's bad for, I guess.
and he also got a bit of a reputation with some of his co-stars when he was playing the bad guy.
Oh, really?
He rubbed Sylvester Stallone up the wrong way.
Oh, did he?
Because his Hollywood debut was a film with Sly Stallone called Nighthawks,
Uh-huh.
and Rutger Hauer plays the bad guy in that, and he completely steals the movie. So yeah, Stallone wasn't too happy about that, and he was trying to sort of quietly trim bits of his Rutger's scenes out.
And also, Stallone's a producer as well, wasn't he? So I know he produced the first. Was it? Did he do the whole Rocky trilogy? I know it was definitely the first, and or he wrote it and directed. I think he
Yeah,
wrote
he
it.
wrote the first one, and
That's
then
it.
he basically took over everything else from the second onward.
Yeah, so it makes sense
Yeah,
if you pissed off the producer, then yeah, it's not, especially if it's like a big
yeah,
star and a main star, then
because
that's two double
Stallone
whammies.
had a lot of say on all his films through the 80s. So yeah, this
Yeah.
film in particular, he was getting outshone, and he didn't particularly like it.
No. Did I was going to ask you another question. I think it was back to the VHS thing because that was really funny. I
Yeah.
can't remember what it was I was going to ask you about that. Were there any videotapes that you used to drive your parents crazy because you'd watch over and over again, or you'd rent out again and again and again? For us, it was. I remember Cool Runnings. Oh God, the
Yeah.
amount of times we saw Cool Runnings is unbelievable. Um, but yeah, I was just wondering with you if there was any films like that you'd rent out again and again, or that you drove your poor parents mad with by watching it all over constantly.
There probably was. I mean, it was probably lots of 80s stuff.
Yeah.
So lots of kind of kids' fantasy films like Labyrinth. Probably Masters of the Universe until
The Labyrinth scared me.
Yeah, it was quite a back then.
It's quite
They made
creepy.
of 80s kids films
Yeah.
quite scary. They had a dark side to them.
And David Bowie like that was really. I mean, I didn't know who he was at the time. I mean,
Yeah.
but I just remember hearing the name David Bowie, and when you know someone's name, and their celebrity, but you don't you've never heard their stuff, and obviously you're a kid, right? So you're just too busy watching this film. But I just remember thinking, this is really freaky. This is really freaky.
Yeah, his tights were quite freaky in that film.
Yeah, I've got to watch it again. I mean, it'll be interesting to revisit as an adult. Another one we used to always watch was Never Ending Story. Oh,
Yeah,
God. Did
that's
you ever
another
watch
one I
Never
used to
Ending
watch.
Story?
Yeah, I know. I love that film as well.
It
That's
is
really
really
good,
good.
and it's quite an interesting film as well. There's quite a lot of layers to that one as well.
Well, it's really dark because you think about it. There's a bit where, I mean, for a child, it's traumatizing. There's a bit where, is it a
Yeah,
trio
the
gets sucked
horse
up
is it?
by, yeah, in a swamp. I mean, I
Swamp.
remember
Yeah,
being absolutely not traumatized, but even watching like those clips on YouTube, of that. And I'm thinking now as an adult, you look back on it and it's like, this is quite hard going for a family kids type film when you think about it. And it is really clever because it's like the nothingness they talk about, don't they? And you could kind of debate what is the nothingness, but like actually I'm thinking the nothingness could be like just depression. I don't know if that's what it's supposed to be. I think, do you know what I
a
mean?
little bit. Yeah, I mean the kid in it is kind of like lonely and he's lost his mum and he's getting bullied, so he's just sort of you've got that side of it as well. It's
Yeah,
quite dark themes for a kids film.
yeah. I can't remember what the name of his friend was. The Red Indian boy, or who had the horse. What was his name?
Atreyu.
Oh, I thought it was a horse.
Oh, is it?
I can't remember.
I think
But
Atreyu is the kid, and then
that's it.
the horse was called Artex.
Oh, that's it, Artex. Oh, I just remember the bit where he's trying to desperately get him to get out, and he's shouting, "Come on, get out!" And this horse is just like basically giving up. He's just, and I was like,
Yeah,
"This is horrible. This is really horrible."
I know.
But
That was sort
actually,
of part of the course, though, wasn't it, in the 80s, like kids' films?
yeah. But they wouldn't show that now, would they? They wouldn't make films like
No,
that for kids. And if it did come out
no,
now,
no.
it would be for a much older audience, maybe 12 or
Yeah,
but but that brings us on to another interesting subject. That the censorship then was completely different to now. Do you know what I mean? Like you wouldn't dream of showing kids. Like I think Jaws at one point was PG, or was it PG? It was PG, I think. And then
I think it was. It probably still is, but yeah,
yeah, and
and that's
then
quite.
years later got
That's
PG
got some
13.
moments in it. Yeah,
Yeah, can you imagine
it's the
watching
bit
that
with
as
the
a
head that
kid?
comes
I know.
underwater, comes out the boat. That gets me every time.
Oh yeah, that's really yeah, that bit as well. That's that's the worst. Or the bit where he jumps out when he's going where he's feeding where putting out the bait or whatever, and all of a
Yeah,
sudden this big you think you know you're not going to see him, and then it's a point basically where he goes, you're going to need a bigger boat basically. But yeah, so it is quite interesting to see like the films we watched as kids. They now would be classified a different what do you call it? What do you call it? Censorship? No, age. When they have the
yeah, the age
PG.
rating. Yeah,
That's it. They'll be completely different now. Um, but yeah, it is. It's obviously says a lot about the way society's influenced film. And if you think about it, film is basically art, isn't it? So art's always not changing, but I guess is going with the way society is. I don't know how to say it. Basically, explain it. Do you know? Does that make sense?
yeah. And I
It's
think
yeah. It's like when you go back to I remember posting it on the Facebook Film Lovers group that I have about there was a Disney film that came out um, and they banned it as Songs from the South because it was so racist. But that was a youth film
yeah.
when it first came out. I mean, that was obviously a very long time. I think that was, I can't even remember when it was.
Must have been 50s or
Yeah, it
60s,
must have been, wasn't it?
like that. Yeah,
And then since then, Disney keeps basically pulling it back and not releasing it, that it's basically been banned completely. But yeah, there's a lot of, like, especially Disney cartoons. You go back to the 20s, the amount of racism in those cartoons is unbelievable, like Dumbo and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to sort of take it with the context, really. I mean, you can't sort of erase what happened. So I think what they tend to do is they put a message now before each cartoon or film or whatever it is. Just to say, this is representative of that time.
Yeah, but don't you find it funny? Because when you, as a kid, I mean, I remember Dumbo, and I was like, because the crows, I mean, that's got to be the most, like, unpolitically stereotypical representation of, black people. I mean, you watch it now and it's just it's so bad. It's so cringeworthy, and also because it's so politically incorrect. But then as a kid, when you watch that, you don't know any different. You take it as, it's just some crows. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You don't know any different. So you just kind of take everything with a pinch of salt, I guess. You don't, you're too... You can't form an opinion yet at that age.
I think maybe as a kid as well, you're just more interested in the sort of fancier bits.
Yeah.
Or if, these days it would be sort of, as a kid, you get kind of preoccupied by all the CGI and the special effects and things.
Would you? Here's a question for you: would you ever show a film like Dumbo to your daughter, or something kind of along those lines? That has a bit of un-PC, stereotypical view of a class or a race of some kind. I mean, I wouldn't.
I've shown her a lot of old films that I used to watch.
All right. And what does she think?
I don't think there's been anything too bad in what I've shown. But I mean, it would go over her head anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of thing, if there was anything. I don't even remember that from Dumbo, because I don't even think I remember seeing Dumbo.
No, I remember watching a thing on YouTube about, I can't remember, racist moments from Disney films or something, or cartoons.
Oh, yeah.
And it was quite an interesting...
Walt Disney was quite racist.
He was really racist. I mean, look, he had the... didn't he have, like, the witch hunt or everything? Of the Soviet Union. I mean, he was... Yeah. He was notorious for it, so... But, yeah. I don't know, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Okay, what's the most recent film you've watched?
The time's about to run out soon, so I'll think of one quickly. I can't... Oh, there is one, but I can't talk about it.
Okay.
You know why, Tom?
Was that the last... That was the last one you watched?
No. That was probably the last... first time I'd seen something. At the moment, it's quite hard because I'm finding it quite hard to... I want to make sure I pick something good to watch, do you know what I mean? And not waste my time on. So it's really bad because I've kind of got into this habit of rewatching films. But I definitely need to find something. I think that's all right
sometimes. You can still pick up new things, can't you?
Yeah. Hang on, the time's about to run out. I think we should end there, Tom.
Okay, that's all right.
I mean, if you want, we can always do another one at another time.
Save that for next time.
Yeah. But it's really interesting. It's been really cool talking to you. I'm sorry about the interruptions on my side so many times because I can't see you, etc. So, but I better sign off there. So thank you, Tom.